Hey everyone, this is a landscape video that I have come up with and will show you how do I change my compositions according to the subject matter. But the plan began during winter, but gradually during summer I found this particular scene, so I thought of converting it. So initially I did this drawing and this sketch, and the sketch turned out to be very useful, but I thought something was missing, and it was very symmetrical in design. So I thought of including this section into this particular painting, and turned out a great result and broke the symmetry. So I started with this charcoal drawing and moved on with it. And here I am using very simple color selection: white, yellow ochre, and cobalt blue. So I'm going to be focusing on the sky part, and this is just the block in, and I'm trying to just cover the sky and nothing more. And this is mostly heavy paint and just covering the brown background initially, or a lot of times I use a burnt sienna base, but burnt sienna being a very powerful brown color, I thought of using a different kind of a PBR7 kind of a color. So this proved out to be very useful and easier to cover compared to a burnt sienna. So I'm using yellow ochre for the base because that part is going to have more light than the rest of the area. So I'm trying my best to cover the canvas with thickest of paint, and now moved on to mild saturation of cobalt blue into the mix, and I'm just mixing that paint because this painting is not about the sky. This painting is mostly about the land and the tree and the shepherd that we saw with the sheep. So I've introduced ivory black and cadmium lemon, and I'm trying to mix a green color. And apart from that, I'll be using burnt sienna, which is another color that is in regular use in my palette. And when that color is added, and that constitutes all the colors in my palette that I use, and that is the basic palette. If you want to look at what the colors that I use, you can see the link above. And I'm just trying to cover the areas for the tree and just creating a differentiation between the black as well as the green. So this is not like a block-in, to be quite honest. This is like a base color, because the ground that I have is a wiped out brown color. Now this is the base color that I'm putting in, and above that I think I'll start the block-in. So this is just to get rid of that brown color, or keep it where I choose to keep it, or maybe choose to show it. So I'm using a lot of variations with yellow ochre, blues, and browns, as well as the ivory black. And here are some cool parts that are automatically made with that white color of the sky. So this is just nothing, I mean, just covering areas so that I find it very easy to build upon, since there is already a base. You may have noticed that I'm using a lot of round brushes, and I prefer to use round brushes in covering the areas, because it has its own the way I hold the brushes, it creates a situation where the paint hits and misses. So I can also use the ground color, that is the light brown color that I have, to show through later on, and I may choose to keep them like that. And also there is a variation of transparent colors and the opaque colors that I would want to create here, so that the depth is always maintained. Let me just point out one thing, that the transparent colors that you see are, thick paint. They are not thin paint, like maybe mixed with turpentine or too much oil or something like that. They are thick paint, but the nature of the pigment is that I'm using here. Now I'm covering the land area, and this is the whole base color that has been put in, and now I'm blocking in, and gradually will be building upon this layer. So I am increasing the saturation a little, increasing the saturation of the blue pigment or the blue paint, creating a few more highlighted areas. But the sky has mostly nothing, it's just plain sky that we see here, and this is a local landscape I see every day almost while driving past through it while going to work. And there are two situations when I took the photograph. One, as I mentioned earlier, one during winter, and this is during the summer. As you can see that initially I laid out my base color. Now I am starting off with modeling, and here I am playing with shapes, etc. But that I do not consider as a part of block-in, and this is block-in that I am doing and playing with shapes. And I have the underneath transparent layers to work on, so that they contribute to the overall sensibility of the scene. Now I'm using a modified brush to create some sort of grass kind of a structure, and these are all modified fan brushes, and fan brushes are very effective. You can use the sides, and also you can use if you modify them heavily, you can use them up to any extent. They're very capable and very useful. Now you can see fine lines are also possible, but here I got a little carried away. But mostly it's useful to paint the dirty colors in the beginning, and then gradually start building up your tones with the lighter colors and the brighter colors later. But here I think I was almost certain that what I would do with this particular painting, so there were not many doubts. You can see I'm using just a fan brush to paint the shapes. If you have the composition ready before you start painting, then it's a lot easier. Sometimes it's very difficult to understand the composition, because whatever you think before painting doesn't work out during the painting. But that's all right, that's also an exploratory process. But in most cases it's better that you plan out almost everything and move on with it. And also you have noticed that I'm painting it very loose, well aware of the final picture in my mind, but I'm aware of how to get there. And this is a very loose way of painting. I'll gradually build up the masks and put the details to paint all the other nitty-gritties. But overall here what I am trying to do is to create an indication of all the surfaces that I have. I already have the base color, which is slightly darker than what appears to be in the final picture, and on top of that, here I have started building up the surface qualities. Now here I am using a palette knife to indicate the pathway, and all of these things will be very useful at a later stage. And you can see how thick the paint is. So even when I'm working on the initial stages, I'm not worried about how thick the paint is, because here I'm keeping the transparent and opaque paints distinct. And you can see the underneath color, the brownish color that I used, I'm keeping that alive in this blocking stage. And now I think I have slightly moved on from the blocking layer to modeling stage, but here again I'm making it a little dirty so that underneath layers can be seen through the upper layers, and that is the technique that I use. And also the paint has its own solidity, which I also use for surface quality. So you can see I'm using palette knife extensively so that the surface always retains its the broken color effect. That was used by the Impressionists in the 19th century, and gradually it was used by a lot of artists throughout the world, even Constable before the Impressionists, Turner, and a lot of even historic artists as well before them. They also used broken color effect, but this was most effectively used during the Impressionism era. Now I am also working on the tree, and nothing much, just the indications of the leaf structure. This color looks like green, but it's actually more yellow and slight mixture of yellow ochre and also the brown, and there is hardly any blue in it. This is actually a mixture of chrome yellow hue, yellow ochre, and ivory black. So that is my blue. So blue was actually mostly used in this painting is in the sky, not that much in the foliage. And black and warm yellow kind of creates a very beautiful green color that is very leafy, so that's useful. And you don't need to use the blues and yellows all the time. And the why I use a warm yellow is because that I live in a very hot country, and the temperature reaches 40 degrees most easily. So why not paint it warm? And rather than why use cool yellow and then make adding red to it to make it look like warm. So that's why I use warm yellows rather than cool yellows. But I use a very cool color, which is lemon yellow, during the monsoon time and just right after the summer, the scorching summer of northern India. But when monsoon reaches us, I use a very different kind of a palette to indicate the qualities of the light at that time. I mean, there is more water in the air, so it will change the way we see things during the summer. Now here I'm just indicating a few branches. It's better that way, that when you paint the trees you do the skeleton first and then you put on the muscles that are the leaf structures. And also indicating shadows here, but they will be blurred out because already I had made that design that there won't be any shadows. And here I'm using a filbert brush, and look how I'm using that to create some sort of a fluffiness, and using mostly a paint that doesn't have any oil added to it. And here I'm using the sides to create some sort of a round leaf structures, and this is the color that the trees are going to retain. Just being very careful about the overall shapes of each and every leaf patterns that we have in the tree. Even after indicating the yellow color, that we have yellowish greenish color, and now I'm reinstating the dark colors because they were somewhat destroyed, but now I can create the depth, and we'll be working on the same method for the other tree as well. And getting rid of this symmetrical two trees was slightly difficult, but I managed it somehow. And since the trees have different shapes, it's very interesting. Now here is another interesting fact, that this light that you are seeing that I'm painting in brown color has been created with burnt sienna and yellow ochre mix, and this is the light that is being reflected from the ground onto the trunk of the tree. And this is very interesting, and this is going to play an important part in this painting's character. So it's not just scorching heat, but there is also reflected light and cool shadows. And using again the sides of the round brush, this is how I paint with round brushes. I generally do not use the tip until unless I have to do the line work. Most of the time I deal with masses, so I use the side of the hair. It's mostly working like with charcoal or maybe with drawing pencils, when you use the side to block the masses and then do the final details with a fine tip. Again, I'm painting the dark areas so that there is depth all the time and not missing out on those before painting the highlights on top of them. And also trying to merge these areas into the bare land that we have. It's very dusty because these parts that we live in is slightly more dusty in nature. I live in an area called Noida. It's an industrial area, but it has turned out to be a very good residential place, and it has got a lot of elements that can benefit an artist, because while I'm painting nature, there are two skyscrapers just standing next to this particular area. So we have a lot of elements of nature here, as well as aspects of a megacity. For a landscape painter, it's very important that one should stay near the nature if they are interested in painting nature. If they're painting a city, they can remain close to a city. I mean, it depends on what you want to paint. But here I am finding both. This is the area that looks very old, whereas there are two big skyscrapers just standing next to this particular scene. Here I am adding the central focal point, that is the brightest area in this painting, because the viewer's eyes will be led to that, and there is a road to lead you in, and you will roam around within this particular landscape. That is the idea. That's how I paint, and that's, I believe, in most landscape artists paint. And there are other areas to focus on, but this is the main area. And you can see in the source photo that it's almost very similar. And I purposefully made the ground a little dirty. When I'll be using the cream color layer on top of those, these will create the illusion of reality, the way the real ground look like. And you can see that I'm again scumbling with the sides of the brush with a slight amount of paint. And here again I'm using the modified brushes to indicate the grasses, and there is every justification to bring your cattle or the sheep or whatever, to let them roam around here and eat, because there are big grasses, and fortunately for them that they are not vanished in this particular area. And it's fortunate for me to have a glimpse of them, and add them into this picture and create a very romantic looking landscape. Although this is not away from realism, because these tribals come here with their cattle and for feeding. So the painting is not just about executing a painting well, it's about what you are trying to communicate with your ability to paint. And it's not just about painting the grasses right and painting the trees right or the clouds right or human figures right. Even if you're painting a person, what sort of a person you have in front of you is also a matter of concern, how you are going to represent them. So it's very important. And even in landscape, it's not just about the landscape, but how you're going to represent all the aspects, and if it needs a certain character to it, maybe a romantic, maybe modern, or maybe classical. So all of these things need creative thinking. So here I've started with highlighting. So this is like almost like reaching the detailing stage from modeling, and you can see the colors are pretty bright, but I'll glaze over it so that they look a little bit normal. Here they are looking a bit unreal. In general, trees do not produce a very highlighted area. There might be a few areas where they have a highlight area, but mostly they follow one value pattern in that, and some areas are sparkly bright, and the other areas that are not receiving the light, that are the inside of the trees, they are in shadow. So that is how one should look to create the three-dimensional aspect of the trees. Here I'm trying to do the glazing on top of the bright areas. Obviously the bright areas were dry, and here I'm modifying some of the aspects and creating finer details. And also adding a few dark marks so that the depth has been created. When you're into realism, it's very important to notice the shape aspect of every object, and also there is enormous amount of abstraction due to their own shape and how light falls upon them. So when you observe the objects minutely, you will realize that the light is actually creating a surface quality that is very abstract, and also their own individual shapes are creating randomness, especially in the things like trees and grasses and roads that are organic in nature, not man-made. So recreating that abstraction needs some observation and practice to perfect the skill. So here you can see there are two culverts there, but I'm trying to create some sort of sense of reality in them, and also working on the trees, creating the abstract shapes. These leaves are not similar to the trees that we have, so I'll be very careful in painting them. Now you will notice the abstraction again. Here I'm painting the light that is falling upon the shined leaves, and this was ridiculed 200 years ago when they saw the light on constables' paintings. They called it constable snow in the summer, and I'm painting constable's snow in India during summer, Indian summer. but it's very effective and it's very realistic. But people didn't know at that time that light falls upon leaves and they shine really bright. It's just white and a slight amount of yellow mixed into it. And this is the base color of the tree, and this is the shadow of the tree. Notice how abstract and random the brush strokes are. I'm just looking at the overall shape, and now this is the detail, but this is also again very abstract. This is the white paint with some amount of yellow to create or retain the warmth. So abstraction is very important, and even in this particular culvert that I painted there, you can see that I'm highlighting them, but in a very random way. So now we need to add those figures into this painting. The landscape is done, but it needs a special touch. Here is the dust that I am painting, which has been created by cattle, and I am increasing the dust a little bit more because these places are very dusty, especially during the summer, and blending them with the pinky. And now it's just, the whole shadow that I painted previously was gone. Now it's a brown shadow. Now this is just the drawing, and I've placed the other image into this. And this is like regular drawing, nothing more. I'm painting a figure, and drawing is in a painting is like painting with color. So I'm using a very thin brush, and some of the shapes may look ridiculous right now, but they will look realistic in future. While doing the drawing, I'm minutely observing their behavior and the effect of their behavior on their posture and on their anatomy as well. So the sheep are very simple to paint. They are actually rounded, but it seems that these sheep do not have a lot of wool because this is not winter. So the drawing is done, and I'm placing some gray colors. The funny thing is that the background is already gray, and I may not have the need to create a gray color. I could have just used the background, but still I did. And maybe in the near future I may just place that white paint on top of the background. There wouldn't have been any need to paint the background there. So my intention is to keep everything very abstract but realistic. Small touches, very observant, and not messing it up. The crispness is all that matters in this kind of painting. But when you look from a distance, they will look realistic. Here I'm trying to understand the effect of their pelvic bone, and also the roundedness of the sheep's form, and also the legs are slightly thinner, and what or how the light falls upon them is also a very important thing to consider. Now here this person is holding a stick, and the stick will be slightly crooked, and I need to rectify that. So there it is. That's enough, I guess. And this is cadmium red, a slight amount of touch. A lot of people may not like this bright patch, but I think the red patch on the man's turban goes along with the greenness and the bluishness of the landscape. Now again, this is the painting the bird holes or the sky holes and creating the abstraction once again and defining them more so that it looks realistic. Initially it was fine, but a tree without three holes are not realistic, and this is how it's done. You must place the white paint or the lighter colored paint inside the trees, not outside. So when I'm painting the bird holes with light colors, I also use the tree colors to correct some of the shapes. And here I'm doing some final touches, the white and light colors. And this is the shot of the final painting. I think it turned out well and very musical, I think. And the clouds are nice, the sky is nice, the light is nice, and there are some of the details. So if you like this video, then please click the like button and also subscribe for future videos, and also remember to click the bell icon so that you get notified when a new video has been uploaded. And remember to check my website www.customandfineart for more paintings. I thank you for your time. Take care.